and the history that France has in Africa, in Congo, in Rwanda, genocide. You call, you put it on social media. Tell me, you pray that these things don't play themselves on the international stage, but I'm afraid they will. They will. So Kenyans, they have issues with Raila Odinga, but those things will not influence the voting pattern. It will be about how Kenya has performed on the international stage. Kenya made a speech at the UN on the side of Ukraine. And in Africa, many countries are on the side of Russia, even if they don't pronounce it. They did. If you people are following what's happening on the side of Ukraine, on the same Russia-Ukraine conflict, South Africa is very passionate on that issue. On the side of Russia, they're very passionate. They've made their position known. On the side of Russia. And US, even under Joe Biden, they threatened to sanction South Africa and even pull him out of AGOA because of that conflict. You have made your position clear. You're on the side of Ukraine. Tell me that this politics will not play itself during the election. You pray that it doesn't. As I learned, he talks about we didn't have a better candidate. Well, have Kenyans ever heard of Erastus Mwenja, a career diplomat? He served as Secretary General of COMESA for, I think, 10 years. And before that, in various capacities in that intergovernmental organization. He served as Deputy AU Commission Chair for, I think, almost 10 years. Which candidate are you talking about? I mean, we elevate our biases to fact. We are immune to logic and reason. But when we do that, we assume the intelligence of our audience. Let's not do that. This is informalization of politics between two political operatives in Kenya that has nothing to the people of Kenya. They're sorting themselves out. But I wonder why they're scared of Raila Odinga. At 80, I don't think he's a factor in Kenya. No, at 80, he's not. So if you're desperate to process him out, then there's something wrong with you. I learned. Thank you.
Eli, with your permission, let me weigh in. And I think I want to piggyback on what Western said. And I think it is very important to appreciate that foreign policy and international relations is actually a lot and mostly informed by the national or internal issue. We have seen how the KK regime has done its foreign policy since it came to power. From the onset, they got it wrong. Nothing that has been done diplomatically that has been done correctly. And speaking of the judgment of the number one diplomat in this country, in relation to how he's dealt with issues internally, it starts to worry you that he's managed to alienate a lot of people because of his approach and his lack of taking time to understand the dynamics of some of the things that are done. I say this because ab initio, the issue of Western Sahara becomes a hot potato because he's trying to please everyone. Then, remember, he was a darling of the West immediately. And because probably he was seen as someone who will be a golden boy. The US is avoiding him as we speak. And I think the last UNGA, he was given a very cold shoulder. For those who follow and who have an interest and without a bias, to be very honest, I don't hate Ruto as a person. And because honestly, as a country, if he succeeds, we succeed. But I think how he's done foreign policy is how not to do diplomacy. And probably it will be taught in schools on how not to do diplomacy. And he'd be a very good example of that. So when you have no understanding of some of these things, he might be, or probably would say he's succeeded in doing so many other things previously. But I don't think, in terms of diplomacy and communication in this government, they've been able to hack it. They have the most number of people who are responsible for communication. They've done the worst. And in terms of foreign policy, there's a lot to be done, especially on how Kenya has represented itself in the international stage. That is a fact we must admit. And the most basic thing, so that we don't even look like we need to go far. The crisis in DRC informs why Kenya to date, the ambassador who's been sent there has not been able to present his documents. Why the AFC or the Nanga pronounced his intentions in Nairobi. And Nairobi did not in any way repudiate that. That's problematic. And so this diplomacy requires subtlety, requires a sense of movement and stealth that has to be very acutely aware of the sensitivities of a lot of things and people. And the worst thing, pandering up to France, that is crumbling and losing its influence within the continent, would be the last thing that we should be doing as a people in terms of foreign relations and our stand on Palestine. These things cannot be gainsaid. We have not covered ourselves in glory in how we've done international relations. And if that becomes anything to go by, it could be a factor in determining. I could be wrong, but we would be very keenly and acutely aware and follow. And when it comes to fruition, Kenyans might celebrate that Raila has lost it. But for those who are aware and are interested in honesty and are clear about the issues, William Ruto will have played into his own failure. And sometimes you might think you're playing chess, but you end up playing checkers.
All right, that is Obed. I was following keenly on the direction you're taking, and I can tell for a fact you are not so confident about the candidate you're presenting based on our local politics and how they have affected our international policies and what I'll say IR generally as a country. I would love to now go to Eve to answer just a few questions that were raised by Jides Kamau. And I hope, Eve, you can remember most of those questions. And if not, we'll be able to bring them back to you. And then we will have Collins followed by Fabish as we try to call it a night. Remember, it's almost election night and things will be
Mm.
happening in Addis. Let's have you, Eve. Eve,
Thank you,
questions,
Eli.
time to answer.
Yes, thank you, Eli. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a tremor here, so I lost the connection. I kept trying to reconnect back. I missed. I really wanted to hear GDES submission. Unfortunately, I didn't get the main points. So could I request maybe just a summary of what you wanted to say? I would appreciate it.
Sure, sure. Before we had the current prime minister, prime cabinet minister, vying for an elective seat, he said there were going to be an earthquake when he announced his candidature. So now that you're experiencing tremors, I don't know if that's a sign. They say, God, give me a sign. So let's have you, Jides, to be able to ask the questions. But there, to captivate it, he was asking, you've been talking about lobbying. Who have you been lobbying against? Are you speaking to presidents? Who exactly are you lobbying with? And there's the aspect of you getting involved from the word go. That means there is money involved. So, how much has been spent on this diplomacy shuttle that is seeing Kenya present a candidate to the African Union as the chair? And I believe there was three other questions. Jides, if I left them out, I grabbed those basic ones that I believe were important. But Jides, kindly clarify so that we can have Eve to come in.
Yeah, the other question is just to know who we are speaking with. Who is
Okay.
Eve? What is her role in all this? in all this campaign?
Thank you. Eli, can you get me?
Yes, if you can, we can get you. So, who are you? You've been involved to the word go. How much have we spent in these campaigns? And yeah, let's start with those two and then the last one.
Thank you. So, who am I? My name is Eve Silima Wanjala. I work in international relations.
If we lost you, kindly go
Senior
ahead
policy
if you can hear
officer.
me.
Hello?
We lost you at the international relations.
Oh dear. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can
Go
hear you
ahead.
now.
Okay, thanks. So I worked for the African Union Commission for 3 years. That is from 2021 up to April of last year as a senior policy officer, specifically working on peace and security sector within the region, covering Somalia and covering DRC as well, covering the Sahel. So I am quite vast in regional politics, especially when it comes to peace and security. Now, how am I involved in this whole work? I was part of the team that did the scoping if Kenya has a position or has a chance to front a candidate for the African Union chairperson. That was in early 2024, between January and April. And I speak to it. That's why you had me kept saying I was involved even before we knew who the candidate was. So you would have heard that we had an executive council, an extraordinary one, in early last year that actually came up with a decision that said because the member states agreed that we're going to do a rotation, so we're going to stick to the Eastern region to front a candidate. Before that position was taken, the African Union was going to open up the position for everybody. So I was a part of the team that went and reminded them, no, we actually had an agreement, so we're going to lock it into the Eastern African region. So that was my role initially. That was even Raila Odinga expressed interest and was, endorsed by Kenya as the candidature. So that's why I'm saying I know for a fact we had potential other candidates that were not picked from that kind of poll. I think I had somebody said, why can't I mention them? I think at this point it's irrelevant. It's not gonna help anybody if I mention them and say it was this, it was Eli, or it was Obed's. That's not the point. Because I am part of the lobbying team, I will stick with my candidate. And I think Obed's, you understand that. So what else?
So, if the other question was, how much have you spent so far, being that you've been involved from the word go?
Yeah.
And yeah, and who are you lobbying against? Because when you say you are talking to, are you talking to the president? And just to even actually make it more interesting, Western here says we had to go with the with some escort to Burundi. Yet this is something President Ruto can easily do without going to Burundi. But of course, diplomacy has a different way of being
Yes.
done. You can explain to us that. Those two
Yes.
questions, if you don't mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
very quickly. You are correct, Eli. Diplomacy is not sometimes as straightforward as we would wish it to be. So there are those candidates or countries that you have a strong relationship with that you do not necessarily have to go and see them in person. So those ones, of course, phone calls would be made. We would use also our embassies and our consulates in those countries to go and pitch for us. But you'd also understand that there is a lot of importance that presidents would love to see, especially when you come in person. It means a lot to most of these presidents. Why Burundi? We know it's a small country. It's not maybe one of the major players, but they do have a vote. Burundi has one vote as much as Morocco has one vote, as much as South Africa has one vote. So we cannot assume and say because they're a small country, then let us not go. And you would be surprised to know that Some of this president would say, okay, I am with you, I am supporting you, but why haven't you come to see me? Does it mean that you don't value my vote as much as you value the vote of Senegal or for Uganda? Sometimes it's all about the optics. So I hope you understand that aspect. And actually, he didn't even just go to Bujumbura. He went all the way to another city that the president was having, some engagements with his citizens. So that shows you that it was actually important for him to go and seek out Burundi's vote. It's one vote, but it's an important vote as well. How much have we spent on this campaign? Unfortunately, I'm not in that docket. I'm not managing the finances. I'm not managing the budget and things like that. So I'm not in a position to say we have spent this amount of money, so and stuff like that. But we do know that Kenya is a free country. There is something we call freedom of information. So I know that once this whole campaign is done and anything, and if it will be in the interest of the people to know how much has been spent, I'm sure the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the campaign team would be able to place it on the table and show people this is what we budgeted for and this is what has been spent. That is also my hope. Even me, I'm interested as a Kenyan, as a taxpayer, to know how much has been spent in these campaigns. I hope that clarifies, Eli, hopefully.
If you can give an estimate, for example, you can tell us in the hotel that you're spending, one person, how much you're spending, then look at it. Mothers are giving birth on the streets. That's why we say you are misappropriating our money and we are bitter against it.
Jides, I hope I think that was